ClickUp just solved AI's biggest problem, and it's saving 4 million teams from productivity loss every day. Unlike ChatGPT and other AI tools, ClickUp converges all your work into one platform, so your AI super agents have full context to prioritize tasks, execute workflows, and draft documents instantly. Teams using ClickUp finish work 30% faster and cut meetings in half. Try ClickUp for free today and get 15% off AI upgrades at clickup.com/podcast. That's CLICKUP.com/podcast.
What's up? It's Sean Linda from Two Black Guys with Good Credit. If managed supply runs is still on your to-do list, here's your sign to upgrade. Walmart Business has the tech, tools, and services that make it ridiculously easy to stock up for your office or team. Think scheduled deliveries, multi-user accounts, and even IT setup. Bonus, with a Walmart Business Plus membership, you get free shipping, spend analytics, and 2% rewards. Join the smart way to shop at business.walmart.com. Terms apply.
That new thing? Yeah, we've got it. The Drop by GNC, bringing you all the newness that matters, handpicked by the pros who actually know what's up and what's proven to work. We keep you on top of the trends and dialed into what's next. Whether you're crushing it at the gym, leveling up your game, or thriving every day, The Drop by GNC is where the latest solutions in health and wellness land first. Non-stop innovation and fresh finds daily. Explore what's new and what's next on The Drop by GNC.
Welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
To me, being perfect is not about that scoreboard out there.
This is a chance of a lifetime.
When you can understand the person, you can then work towards a common goal.
We are all on the same team.
Know your role and do it to the best of your ability.
Focus on the fundamentals. We've gone over time and time again.
Your defense has got to be better.
Leave no doubt tonight.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
My name is Paul Barnett, and you are listening to the Great Coaches Podcast, where we interview great sporting coaches to try and find ideas to help all of us lead our teams better. Our great coach on this show is former Australian basketball player and coach, Jan Stirling. Jan played 163 games in the Australian National League between 1982 and 1991. She started her coaching career in 1993 in the Australian National League, guiding her team, the Adelaide Lightning, to 12 straight finals appearances and 5 consecutive grand final appearances, resulting in 4 championships. In 2001, she became head coach of the Australian women's team, the first time a former player and a woman had ever taken charge. Jan had immediate success, winning a bronze medal at the 2002 World Championships, the silver medal at the 2004 Olympics in Athens, and then gold at the 2006 World Championships in Brazil. She has also held high-performance coaching roles with the South Australian men's cricket team and the Port Adelaide Power Australian rules football team. Jan is a passionate and energetic leader, the type of person who looks you directly in the eye as she speaks to you. This was a masterclass in coaching, and the highlights for me were her view on great coaches as being people who are good at the holistic development of their athletes and staff, how resilience within a team can be built by finding ways for your athletes to sacrifice, be a resource for their teammates, and experience a level of competitiveness that means they are challenged for their place in the team. How training and learning has to be fun if you expect your athletes to keep coming back with a sense of passion, and the importance of gratitude expressed through handwritten notes from athletes and staff back to the people who have helped them on their journey as they head towards a championship game or significant event. I hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
The Great Coaches Podcast.
Jan Stirling, good afternoon and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Paul.
Jan, I've been looking forward to this conversation for weeks, and we've been trying really hard to find a date. It's because you're so busy. Could you tell us where you are in the world and what you've been up to today?
Okay, well, I'm General Manager of High Performance with Basketball Australia. Currently in my Adelaide office, although I do normally spend a lot of time in Canberra where we have a Centre of Excellence. The Centre of Excellence is where we have a full residential program for our emerging boomers and opals. So young people aged anywhere between 15 and 19. And then in 2017, the NBA decided to set up what they call their Global Academy, so their most elite academy, again for young men, although they are starting to advance in women. So I spend my time between Adelaide and Canberra, and obviously the challenge right now, as with most Olympic and Paralympic sports, is trying to manage how we extend a program for another 12 months, keep athletes engaged for another 12 months to actually attend an Olympic Games in 2021.
Jan, you're one of those coaches who has had exposure to multiple sports. And so in this interview, I'm really looking forward to talking to you about your work in Australian football and other things as well. But I'd like to just step back, if I could, and ask you about the great coaches that you've had exposure to firsthand. There's Tara van der Veer, there's Anne Donovan, there's Ken Hinckley, there's David Parkin, and of course, Rick Charlesworth, who we were just talking about.
Yeah.
What do you think the great coaches do differently?
Yeah, that's an interesting one that comes up. I think, number one, I firmly believe they know how to surround themselves with very good people. And I think in all those people you mentioned, they're not only good human beings, but they also they won't stand for any fools either. So and of course, one you mentioned, David Parkin, who's been a wonderful mentor of mine for some 30 years, I think. He always said to me, Jan, just make sure you got people alongside you that are actually better than you in some areas where you work. So, and I've always held that true. So I think number one is being able to recognise where our own weaknesses are as a head coach, because you can't be everything. You just can't. And so being able to recognise your gaps and being smart enough to bring in people that are going to excel in those areas where you're not as strong, so that the collective is stronger than any one part. And I think that's probably one of the best things that most of these coaches are probably, pretty good at. And the other thing I'll say too, and I say it no matter which coaches I talk to, you don't find too many what you call great coaches. I don't know whether, those others you mentioned are great coaches. Me, I've just coached and done okay with it because I've had good people. But you have to be authentic with your care for the people, not only just your athletes, but also for your staff, and also understand that the athlete and a staff member have an extended family unit who share the journey. And having an appreciation of that, I think is really, really important, because then you're able to manage the what-ifs that happen throughout any athlete's life. The injuries or the family hiccups or the relationship bust-ups or whatever. So you really need to have that authentic care and be aware that an athlete comes to you, but they have an extended family unit that will play a major role. They will have significant people in their lives that you need to know who they are, not necessarily intimately or anything like that, but just know who they're going to turn to in their time of crisis. And I think most great coaches are pretty good at grasping the holistic development of athletes and their staff.
Jan, you talk about, holistic development and care, and I've seen you're very generous with your time in mentoring other coaches, and I've seen some great footage where you say, it's about developing the attributes that young people need for a very full and balanced life. And it leads me to this question of, so what is the role of the coach in an elite level basketball team?
Yeah, well, I can also share with you how that all came about. I was very much a rookie coach in the WNBL, so the first female appointed to the WNBL from the Adelaide Lightning. I was asked to talk at a sports festival in Adelaide. The person prior to me was, our most elite cycling coach, Charlie Walsh, who at that point in time virtually had a gold medal factory. That's what he delivered. Cyclist to a gold medal factory. He was up before me to 2,000 odd coaches at this, mentioned how I need to know what they're doing every minute of pretty much every day. I need to know, etc. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, we are poles apart because, they have to do this training. It was so regimented. So I got up in my rookie way and just said, oh, look, no one could dispute Mr. Walsh and his gold medal factory, but I come from a team sport, and actually I want all my players to have a really balanced lifestyle. I want them to have fun. I want them to have time out. I finished my speech. I almost ran out of this place, and I heard this voice behind me, and it was David Parkin that I didn't know at the time. He's just like, Jan, and I'm running down the street. I turned around and it was Mr. Parkin. Oh, my God. And I went back to him and I put my hand out feebly. I said, hello, Mr. Parkin. and his words to me, he said, Jan, you are on the right path. And that's where our kind of like the mentoring relationship between David and I and the friendship grew. From that day on, I said, oh, thank goodness, Mr. Parkin, because no one can dispute what Charlie Walsh does with that individual cyclist that has, between, 0.5 of a second is a difference between gold and nothing. In team sport, it's uniquely different. So, that understanding of holistic development I've had from a very early phase. And what the role of the coach, my one statement to cover that, from the time you have the privilege to coach someone, male or female athlete, to the time they leave your program, your role is to make them more resilient for life. And if they have God-given potential to be the best they can be in their chosen field of endeavour, being sport, great. But at the end of the day, if you're going to have them commit time and effort and, accountability and discipline to your area, then make them bloody more resilient for life and put out good human beings. Pretty simple, really.
Pretty simple, but not.
There's nothing to do with basketball, is it?
Well,
you're sitting there thinking, how the hell did she get to coach in the Olympics? Well, I don't know either, Paul.
Jen, the reason I put this podcast together was for exactly the answer that you just gave. There's something about coaches being selfless and having a high degree of stoicism that I think is missing a little bit in the world these days. And developing resilience for life is at the core of having a happy life. So I think it's a great answer. But I have a follow-up question. And if this is the goal and you want to create these holistic athletes that are resilient for life, and of course some of the rare talent will move on and represent their country and perhaps go further, what are the values or the behaviours that are central to your coaching philosophy to help achieve that?
Well, when I say more resilient for life, yes, you want them to learn how to be winners and what they need. You want them to learn that you have to make sacrifice. You also want them to learn that they have to actually be a confidant sometimes and a resource to their own peer teammates and even someone who may be challenging for their own position in a team. But certainly the values, and it's funny, you can write a whole range of values up on the wall, as you do in the number of seminars I've been in, or motivational workshops and or team building workshops. And I remember going to the Port Power and Jan, we want to be accountable. Oh, okay, yeah, we want to be we want to have trust. And then you peel it back and I say, well, actually, boys, so trust. All right, so the strength. I'll use an example. The strength and conditioning coach has had a hiccup with the family. He's going to be an hour late into the gym, but you boys have got to get started. We talk about trust. So if you go in the gym and you don't think anyone else is watching, what will I see? I'm watching above. What will I see you guys do? You haven't got your S&C coach there. You've got to get your own programs. You've got to get organised. Will I see you guys taking control of that situation and delivering on what you're meant to deliver? Or you slacken off and have a bit of a chat here and etc. So when you talk to me about the value words of being trust, being accountable, it's not about having trust. It's about being trustworthy to do what you're meant to do when you're not being watched. So there's those core values, but the biggest one I think is you can't go past passion, Paul. You just can't go past anyone who's successful. You talk to any successful person, in general, most people say they're really passionate about what they do. And so that's a big one for me. What you don't want is an athlete who is told, well, you're 7'2", you need to be a basketball player, but they have no real passion or desire to be that. So they certainly need to be passionate about what they do. And another one for me is to actually have not just an accountability to yourself, but a desire to add value and be prepared to try to make the place that you've been in a little bit better than when you found it. So we took the word legacy is used frivolously at times, Paul, but every athlete that comes to be a boomer or an opal, their legacy should be, have you made that environment a little bit better than when you found it, or have you helped someone else adjust to that environment a little bit easier than when you struggled with it? The legacy piece is important, and what does that look like? And how can you contribute to making the environment better for the next generation coming through? I think they're really important things, rather than just be, oh, I'll take what I can out of this and then just move on, and having a sense of what a legacy piece is and how you can contribute to making an environment better than when you found it would be fairly important to me.
Jane, you talked about, I'm going to come back to legacy later in the interview if I can. I'd like to just save it for the end because I'd like to take you on a bit of a journey. You talked about Adelaide Lightning and how you were this young coach.
Yep.
And, you talked about your time as a rookie coach there. But what I found interesting when I was reading about your time in Adelaide was 5 consecutive grand finals, 4 wins. And I was interested to know, how did you keep that team moving forward, motivated, growing, succeeding without a sense of entitlement, without becoming complacent?
Yeah. The first thing is that the way the Lightning was formed is important to this, because it can establish the framework I was able to put in. Prior to the Adelaide Lightning becoming a team in the Women's National Basketball League, the way the Women's National Basketball League started was just that some club teams from South Australia and some club teams from Melbourne decided, why don't we cross the border a few times a year and play each other rather than just play domestically? That's how the WNBL started. So up until the point of the Adelaide Lightning going into the league, there were 3 full teams in the WNBL: North Adelaide Rockets, Noarlunga and West Adelaide Bearcats. So work it out, 3 teams, 10 athletes in each team, 30 athletes. The cost of the league trying to go to a more professional level, the cost for those teams to be engaged in a full WNBL was prohibitive. And also our teams had dropped off in terms of, if you like, not necessarily winning the league. I think North Adelaide won the league in 1990, I think. So we had to reduce 3. So if you imagine you've had 30 athletes that are playing in the WNBL, all in South Australia, and suddenly it's now 1 team. I had 30 athletes contact me as the head coach, Jan, I should be starting 5 in that 1 team because I play 37 minutes a game with, blah, 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 and, we made the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. So I had to reduce from 30 down to, say, 10 or 12. So the first thing I said, so we had this thing about, first thing is, if you want to come and play for the Adelaide Lightning, the number 1 criteria, you must want to have the passion and desire to be the best you can be. Oh, yeah, I want to be the best and I want to play for the Adelaide. No. The best person you can be. Buzz will if we train hard enough, etc., Buzz will take care of you. You're already good. But if you want it, you have to want to be the best person you can be. Then the next one was, for me, I needed to establish a unique environment. How do you do that? Well, strength and conditioning became a regular feature of the program, making sure that we could do camp, all those sorts of things. So you have to make it a unique environment, which we did. We were able to do that. It wasn't about me. It was about accessing. We worked with footballers over time. We worked with the Star Division, the police force. I had all these things going on to make that environment unique. So the athletes within that environment, one thing that was required, they had to appreciate the opportunities they were given. And so in time, it kind of like you had the best people that want to be really good people, great, tick a box, you're in. People that obviously want to work hard, yep, tick a box, you're in. People that would challenge themselves to do things that you weren't asked to do previously, such as, guys, I need you in the stadium. I need you at the stadium at 5:45am for a 6 o'clock start. So the kids that have to go to work, we can finish, that's never been done before. So over that time frame, Paul, we had I was just blessed to have some wonderful human beings to coach, seriously. The sorts of people that we attracted to the Lightning were people that wanted to better themselves, knew they were well cared for, knew that they were going to be challenged and looked after. Not necessarily monetary-wise, but in terms of caring for them. And each year you challenge yourself to mix up the program. And I remember the wonderful Rachel Spawn, 4-time Olympian, and we happened to be doing a guest speaking gig together. She didn't know I was in the room. I didn't know she was on. She was interviewed by Peter Walsh, and he asked her the question. This is 10 years in to the Lightning's existence. And he said, Jan's a really hard coach, isn't she? She says, oh, yeah, she is, but she really cares about you. He said, well, how can the Lightning, 12 years in a row we played in finals. We never missed the finals in 12 years. And the greatest compliment you have as a coach is when she says, you know what, trainings were just always interesting. They were always varied, and we never, ever got bored with Jan. So, as you say, what's the stimulus you use? You've got to change it up. As a coach, you've got to learn and grow. You've got to speak to other coaches. How can you make this environment? If they're going to give you, we played 22 games in a National League season. I remember doing the stats once. We would train 340 times for 22 games, 340 times. Work it out on the number of days. Sometimes it's twice a day. And I think, God, I demanded a lot from these young women, but they all came back. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of learning. And, they deserved to be stimulated. And that's another role of the coach, make sure you stimulate your athletes.
What's up? It's Sean Linda from Two Black Guys with Good Credit. If managed supply runs is still on your to-do list, here's your science upgrade. Walmart Business has the tech, tools, and services that make it ridiculously easy to stock up for your office or team. Think scheduled deliveries, multi-user accounts, and even IT setup. Bonus, with a Walmart Business Plus membership, you get free shipping, spend analytics, and 2% rewards. Join the smart way to shop at business.walmart.com. Terms apply.
ClickUp just solved AI's biggest problem, and it's saving 4 million teams from productivity loss every day. Unlike ChatGPT and other AI tools, ClickUp converges all your work into one platform, so your AI super agents have full context to prioritize tasks, execute workflows, and draft documents instantly. Teams using ClickUp finish work 30% faster and cut meetings in half. Try ClickUp for free today and get 15% off AI upgrades at clickup.com/podcast. That's CLICKUP.com/podcast.
Well, this experience sets you on the way to take over the Australian team, which you did in 2001. And then you go on this amazing run of success that culminates with the gold medal at the 2006 World Championships. And it's a similar question to the Adelaide question, actually, but what were some of the things you did first when you took over the Opals?
Well, I've been an assistant with Tom for a while anyway, so, and look, to be honest, when the applications came out, I initially had no intentions of applying. And then a few of my, and take a step back, with the Lightning, I used to also write to government for funding. So I got all the government funding, I wrote to sponsors. We did different things with sponsors that the Adelaide 36ers wouldn't do. Like we would send them a personal card at the end of the season signed by all the players to thank them, which often those companies would put in their boardroom. Chairmen would say, I'm going to send them a letter. I said, well, if I'm a sponsor, I expect a letter from the chairman, but a card signed by the team, that's a bit different. Anyway, so we did all of that. But going back to the Opals, I had to, I'd been with them for a while, and when the first campaign we had, which was in May after the 2000 Olympics, so if you looked at the Opals team that played in Sydney 2000, wonderful result, silver medal, to May the next year, there was only one of those Opals that was present in the East Asia Cup in May the next year, because all the others had gone to Europe or across to America because they had been on hold for 12 months in Australia, not earning their larger wages from the European stint, because Tom Maher said, you stay, if you want to be picked in the Sydney 2000 team, stay home. So they all foregone, obviously, their larger salaries. And, of course, when I came in, I knew. I just said, well, they've got to go. They've got to go and make their money. They've had a year. It's a bit like anyone saying, oh, you're not going to earn your money for a year, just stay here. What are you going to do the next year? You're going to go. So for me, I had to certainly change things up and get that stimulus back. And I was a very different coach to Tom Maher, so that was another one. But they all loved Tom Maher, or most of them did. Some of them didn't. So for me, it was about, I guess, just letting them know that the standards of the Opals and trying to sustain success was going to be very, very hard to achieve. It's one thing to sort of get into the top 3 in the world. It's another thing to stay there. And then I was just very fortunate that at every major, we call it a benchmark event, but at every major event that the Opals played in during my time as a head coach, we got on the podium. We didn't miss the podium once. So the challenge for the group was to say, look, is Sydney all we're about, or can we sustain success by continuing the journey together and then bringing in some new blood? And everyone just bought into it, which was really, fortunate for me. But it was a different landscape because with the Adelaide Lightning, one of my nicknames on radio in Adelaide used to be Madam Hitler. Believe it or not. I get introduced, we've got Madam Hitler on the line, Jan Stirling on there. Oh, thanks, because I was hard. When I say I was hard, but the girls would put up with my hardness sometimes because of the fact they knew I cared. You know, some of them I had to feed them because they didn't have enough money and all those sorts of things. The Opals, that was a different ballgame. I virtually came in and had this all-star team who knew more than me. So my delivery style, Paul, had to change. I had to, and coaches evolve. So I couldn't be as direct because, wow, I'd have, the Ryan Jacksonville saying, who the hell do you think you are? So it was very challenging to actually, one, accept that I had to alter my delivery style at times, not to appease them, but to get the best out of them. And that's the other thing is that it's one thing is, I could have, if I had just said, well, hey guys, I'm the head coach, you're going to play for the Opals, you just do it my way, that was never going to work. So I had to kind of get that balance of letting them know I cared as much for them. I understood that they had to go over to Europe and earn their money. I understood that I had to stay in contact with them. When they come back, well, why aren't I starting 5 and all that sort of stuff. So you just got to manage the expectations of athletes that come in from an environment where they're the actual absolute star in their professional league team, that they come into the Opals and they're not necessarily that absolute star. They're a very integral and important contributor to the Opals, but not necessarily the iconic star. And managing those expectations was something I had to learn pretty damn quickly.
Well, these days, not these days, you're with Basketball Australia, but you've also worked with the Port Adelaide AFL Club on their player leadership program. And I'd be really interested to know, what are the key components of an elite player leadership program?
Yeah, and that's interesting because at the time, I got invited to the Port Power because Mark Williams knew me. And in fact, he wanted me to go about a year earlier, but it was leading into Beijing and I just couldn't give them the time that they needed. And they'd had several leadership models, as AFL does. They just get another consultant in to take the boys through a leadership program, etc. And so I come on board and, you had, at that stage, you had David Roden and you had the Corns brothers, Chad and Kane, and guys that had been in the system for a decade. I looked at that and I said, well, Mark, they don't want to sit through some sort of leadership workshop with Jan Stirling. So again, adjusting to the environment, I went to that group of guys, just took them for a coffee and said, guys, I'm going to work with the other group, the ones that have had, there's maybe been in the club 2 to 3 years. I can work with them and have a look at how they want to develop their solid value system. What do they want to be known for? What, their legacy piece, how do they want to contribute to the Port Power? For you guys, can I tap into you, all of you fine gentlemen, as my knowledge brigade? So I made this knowledge brigade with the Power where if I say to you, oh, look, Jacob over there, he's struggling a little bit, can you put your arm around him and help him out with something? You know what I mean? So I had this kind of knowledge brigade that I just drew upon at times because they'd had leading teams, they'd had corporate leadership models, they had all this stuff. And I thought, God, the last thing they need to do is for me to stand up in front of them and tell them about leadership. I mean, seriously. So very quickly you learn that there's no one leadership model that fits all. At the end of the day, Paul, I still think it's about the values and the behaviours that you instill, and how are you going to be. Your true leadership comes through when there is chaos around you and you're still able to deliver to the best of your ability. In other words, you can still stay focused on the task and deliver to the best of your ability when there is absolute chaos around you. Now, that chaos could be at a footy club, that could be, as happened at the Power, the CEO hates the head coach and whatever. That's chaos that the boys cannot control. If a coach gets sacked, you can't control that. Boards make decisions for reasons we may not know. How can you stay on task and stay focused and do your job and focused on what you need to do and still be true to yourself and still true to the playing group and still deliver on your values and behaviours in the best possible way while you're in this quadrant of chaos? And that's when I think good leaders hold true, is they can still function appropriately, lead, and more importantly, be influential leaders. Everyone can lead, but can you influence others? We can also, I'm sure you're a leader. I'm sure you're an influential leader, by the way, Paul. I'm sure you are in the work you run. But can you influence people to actually then thrive and deliver on the values and behaviours that your environment holds highly? Can you influence people to embrace that and then deliver and then influence the next group of people? So I'm more into influential leadership rather than just saying, who are your best leaders? The best leaders are the ones who can influence others to be good people.
Jan, it might be an impossible question, but can you teach influential leadership? Is it possible? And what would be in the syllabus? Are
leaders born or are leaders? I think it's a bit of a combination, Paul. I think it can be, part of it is inner, for sure, but I think you can teach it. Whether the person is recipient, it's like me, had I not made changes, I went to my first World Cup with the Opals. The Australian sport, because we'd had a hiatus of players, the Sports Commission said to me, Jan, you need to stay top 5 for your funding. No pressure. You need to stay top 5. Well, we got on the podium, didn't we, Paul? We got that bronze medal. And so I'm thinking to myself, wow, how good am I? Get back from overseas, Jan, you need to come to a mediation. A mediation? What are you talking about? We just won a bronze medal. We only had to come top 5. Wow, I'm pretty good. They said, no, you need to come to a mediation with, a 20-year-old in the team who's not happy. Okay, then. So I learned, I won't divulge any names or anything, but I went to this mediation. So there I am, whatever I was then, the 47-year-old coach, and I'm going to a mediation with this 20-year-old who's not happy about something. But here's the thing, Paul, and that was my first gig with the Opals. I'm on the wrong side of the white lines to really make a difference in the game. Understand that. I'm not in the field of play. I'm a coach. I'm on the sidelines. There's only so much I can do. The players on the court are the most important people. Clearly, they make a difference. I don't. I can guide and So for me, I just sort of said, okay, got issues, concerns, I'm here to listen to them. And in terms of that, and when you talk about being influential, I said, you're influencing me. I'm here to listen, but what you don't raise today, don't you ever raise. So here's your chance. Give it all to me now, and I'm sure we can work through this and we can both come out of this better, which is, all that happened and all that sort of stuff. But so in terms of the influential part, that particular young athlete now, who's a mature age athlete, has gone on to be quite an influential leader in her own way, very much so. At that time, a superstar who really was talking on behalf of a 30-year-old in the team, I knew all the reasons why, but that young woman is now quite an influential leader. Back then, she wasn't influential. She was a superstar, wasn't happy, blah, 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 pretty much mainly about self. Another 10 years experience, nurturing, development, growth, input by a lot of people, is now an influential leader. So it can be taught. It's whether that person wants to flick the switch and understand that they can be better at what they do. you and I are sitting here, we're breathing air, we're still alive. I don't know about you, but I'm still on my learning continuum in life. The learning continuum of life for me is each and every day. Can you do something better today than you did yesterday? Can you help someone a little bit better today than you did yesterday? Can you influence someone today that needs some influencing for their own benefit? So it's an everyday thing for me.
I've got this great quote from you, actually. It says, as a coach, you're not a finished product. There is still plenty to learn, share and do. And I'm just wondering, we've had lockdown, we've had this period of reflection, and I'm wondering if there was anything interesting that you learnt or discovered during the last 6 months.
Yeah. Look, I suppose, Paul, for me, I've been very fortunate that having been adopted at birth by two parents that clearly wanted both my sister and I, so both my sister and I were adopted, and having come from, humble beginnings. In fact, we lived in low socioeconomic. We used to ride our bikes and pick up the famous Bruce McAvaney and go to Woodville High School together quite often. We'd pick each other up and ride through 5 kilometres to high school. And so I suppose what I've learned started from an early foundation, and that was, my father's eulogy when Dad always said to us, he said, Jan, don't be too quick to criticise or be critical of others, because unless you walk in their shoes, you don't know why they do what they do. So I think for me, my learning in life is, and quite often when you've been a head coach, Paul, when things don't go your way, you can get pretty damn aggressive about, they didn't do this for me, they didn't do this, or, the board need to give me more latitude, whatever it is. You can be really, really harshly critical, but at the end of the day, you have to take a step back and just understand that sometimes decisions are made by others who may impact on you, but you can't criticise that if you don't have the information. And so what I've learned is that share information so people can make an empowered decision. And don't get critical. If you haven't given them the information they need to make that decision, then don't blame them that they've made that call. And as I mentioned earlier, I think off air with you, was the fact that in general, coaches in Australia are very collaborative and caring and sharing of their wisdom and knowledge. We all learn different things along the journey. But for me, sharing information, and even with your athletes or your staff, giving them the full picture so that they can make an informed decision is probably one of my most biggest learnings. Give people the information they need to make an informed decision. And in that way, you can't then be critical. And understand too that it may not always be the answer that you want. That could hurt sometimes.
No, it definitely can. And I'm conscious that I've only got a short period of time left because you've been very generous with your time today. And I want to circle back to where we started, which was you talked about legacy. And I would like to ask you, as you sit now back and reflect on this long and illustrious career that is still going, but what is the legacy you think you've left behind so far?
Oh, I can come up with a very politically correct answer then, so you have to ask others.
No, thank you.
I don't know. Look, Paul, this question comes up from time to time. Hopefully you've influenced others too, and I think I have in many ways. And I'll use an example of what my legacy has been in one way. When I got to coach my first Olympic team, and before we went to Athens in 2004, given my Adelaide Lightning journey is the reason why I was the head coach. The success of the Lightning clearly carried weight in me being appointed the head coach of the Opals. I remember the number 78 handwritten cards, and I write a lengthy card, by the way, Paul. I write a lot. And it was to it was the parents of every athlete, it was to the partner of every athlete, and then it was to a range of our corporate sponsors. We then go to Athens. then had the group together, and I had Trish Fallon and Christy Harrow, wonderful racial sport. I had some Sandy Bondello was in that team. You know, I had some fantastic athletes, and I just challenged them and I said, hey, you know, now that we're all here together, have any of you given thought to actually, when you get home, writing a card to someone who actually would be home watching you with great interest that might have impacted on you really early in the start of your journey? So it might have been you. And straight away the girls said, oh, yeah, my under-10 coach was really fantastic. Do you know that every one of them did that? And fast track it now to now, and I know for a fact that there's some of those athletes that I've engaged with over time that say, oh, Jan, one of the best things, you know, I actually send that, now it's email, of course, but I actually write to people now and thank them. And I, you know, when I achieve something or when I won my MVP, I wrote back to them and said, thanks for sharing, you know. And so I'd like to think my legacy is that I've helped people embrace a little bit more of thanking and having gratitude for the journey that you've had, and understanding that even if someone's only had you for one season, that when you're an opener and you're getting that medal around your neck, mate, they own you. Right? But let them know that they mattered to you and that they've contributed to your journey because they kept your interest, or, you know, you're ready to quit and they talked to you about whatever it is. And it could be a grandma or an auntie, it could be your brother or sister, but just make sure that, let them know that you appreciate and you're grateful for how they've impacted on your journey at some stage. There might have been a time when you didn't make the team, but then you made the next one or whatever. And I know for a fact that some of those fantastic young women that I've been privileged to coach, a lot of them do that now. So that's the only legacy I know. It's pretty, that's the only one I know. I can't give you any more. That's it. I like it when that happens. And do you know, I still have an athlete now, Jade Kingy, who's played for the Opals, didn't get to a benchmark event. She's been over, you know, she's got 4 wonderful daughters over in America. She's lived every Christmas. I get the card and the updated photos of her daughters. I get the email that says, Jan, I know I send you this every Christmas, but you impacted so much on my life. You know, so, you know, and there she is sending to me something that reflects gratitude. So that's a win. That's a win for Jay Kingy because she's a fantastic human being, and her daughters will learn that from her. So, yeah, so that's it, really, not much. Gratitude, having gratitude.
What an amazing way to finish this interview. Jan, I can't thank you enough for your time. It's I feel so energised after chatting with you, and I can't wait to share this.
I'm sorry I was so hard to get hold of.
No problem. Thank you so much, Jan. I appreciate it.
No worries. Okay, take care, mate.
The Great Coaches Podcast.
Hi, it's Jim. You've been listening to our discussion with the razor-sharp Jan Stirling, the General Manager of High Performance with Basketball Australia. I was completely captivated by Jan's powerful story about gratitude and her no-nonsense approach in working through player-coach mediation, and how both of these examples delivered connections that still live long after the coach-player relationship has ended. Jan's passion for building influential leaders and her perspective of true leadership being one's ability to consistently deliver your best when surrounded by chaos are lessons that will stay with me in my own leadership development journey. Paul said it well. This was a true masterclass. Coming up next on the Great Coaches podcast, we speak with former Indian international cricketer and the current coach of the Indian women's cricket team, W.V. Raman.
So my style has been that I always tell the captain that until the 48 hours prior to the game, I'll be more active. I'll be saying a lot of things to the players if required. But from the time that we got to get into a game, which is 48 hours before the start of the game, it's all yours. You're the person who's handling the players. You're the person who will be saying what needs to be said. It's all your ship and you're the captain. And the team from then on, 48 hours leading up to the game, is going to be handed over to you, and I'll be staying in the backdrop.
And just before we go, coaches are not usually the type of people who seek the spotlight. And so if you can put us in contact with a great coach that you know has a unique story to share, we would love to hear from you. You can contact us using the details in the show notes.
Parles-tu français?
¿Hablas español?
Parli italiano?
If you've used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based technique teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world. With lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers, Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/acast. Spelled BABBEL.com/acast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Shipping, billing, admin, payroll, marketing. You're managing all the things. So why waste time sending important documents the old-fashioned way? Mail and ship when you want, how you want with Stamps.com. Print postage on demand 24/7 and schedule pickups from your office or home. Save up to 90% with automated rate shopping. That's why over 1 million small businesses trust Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com and use code PODCAST to try Stamps.com risk-free for 60 days.
That new thing? Yeah, we've got it. The Drop by GNC, bringing you all the newness that matters. Handpicked by the pros who actually know what's up and what's proven to work. We keep you on top of the trends and dialed into what's next. Whether you're crushing it at the gym, leveling up your game, or thriving every day, The Drop by GNC is where the latest solutions in health and wellness land first. Non-stop innovation and fresh finds daily. Explore what's new and what's next on The Drop by GNC.